The march is on to complete the Haunted Mansion and Tiana's Bayou adventure. Looks like they're starting to build finally in New Orleans Square, but they're still digging in at Critter Country. Let's talk updates to the refurb calendar and the latest from Downtown Disney, but we'll start first with an ops update for Single Rider at Space Mountain. They have moved where guests queue. You still enter through the exit as you did before, but instead of going all the way to the rear of that space, you enter Single Rider right here at the top of this ramp that runs alongside the old Captain EO building. That's the Single Rider queue now today. Previously, Single Rider guests would have to sort of thread their way through the outbound guests leaving Space Mountain, pass through and by the gift shop there on the left, also pass through and by the DAS booth over here on the right, pass through and by the guests picking up their ride photos, and then eventually you would arrive and make your left turn down the hall. And this is where things got complicated, because there would be moments where all of these guests would coalesce at some point in time, creating quite a backlog, especially if the Single Rider queue was, let's say, 40 or 50 deep. It could run out into that section there and mix with all the other guests exiting the attraction, waiting for their DAS pass, looking at photos. So in an effort to compartmentalize things a little bit, they've set this queue back a little ways to get them separate from that group. And then a cast member will be standing by there to hand guests a card, a laminate Single Rider pass. And then that guest would take their pass through, and they would actually go the same way. They would go through those crowd again and make that left down the pre-existing Single Rider path. This is a test. I've been advised that it's not necessarily a permanent situation, but it's just something that they're testing out in order to solve that riddle of those guests. The queue, it's only a problem when the Single Rider queue was getting too long. Because it's very popular at Space Mountain. And there would be occasions where everybody would mix together, and it got really confusing, especially for the DAS guests trying to get their passes there, and for the guests exiting the attraction. An interesting side effect from this, I believe, will be an increased awareness of Single Rider even existing at Space Mountain, because there are a subset of guests who didn't even know that Space Mountain offered it. But you need only walk now to the Starcade practically, and you can start seeing those signs right away. Two big ones: Single Rider, enter here, in a space that you have never seen, observation for Single Rider. So I do believe it's going to create more awareness for Space Mountain for Single Rider, and you're going to have more people using this offering, which I think in the end, I know some Single Rider guests are probably not going to be thrilled with it, but the average guest, the park as a whole, is better served by more people using Single Rider as opposed to the standby queue. And that applies especially to very popular attractions like this and Radiator Springs Racers. Single Rider, they want to keep that as their as their own little secret, the Single Rider guests. But as I said, for the entire park, for the entire populace of Disneyland, I feel like more awareness is good. More awareness is better for Space Mountain. So that's our PSA for Single Rider at Space Mountain. While we're here in Tomorrowland, we'll get on the monorail to check in on Downtown Disney. And it looks like they've made quite a bit of progress. There's all kinds of rebar and stuff on the ground. There's definitely more definition being established. I don't know what's going to wind up here. Again, this is all backstage, but it's kind of fascinating to watch this little area grow a little bit and get more personality, which I think is great. Parkside Market is still behind Scrim, unfortunately. I wonder how that's going to look now. When this is all done, how is the Parkside Market, how's the monorail ride going to feel passing by a giant concrete backside of a building there when guests arrive in Downtown Disney? Because I always love the view. I love the view from the monorail, no matter where I'm at. Let's check out Earl's Sandwich. Things have looked pretty grim as far as the future for Earl's Sandwich, in terms of them building that new structure in Downtown Disney for the current structure that's in the old La Brea Bakery to be closed so that they could build Porto's. Grim, I should say, for the prospects of Porto's arriving. As we've mentioned in the past, there's been a rumor that Portis is trying to back out of their agreement to build here in downtown Disney. And we check in every week just to see if there's any sort of change in the progress of this temporary, the portable building that they've installed or were planning to install to serve as a temporary location for Earl of Sandwich. I don't know how, as signals go, how useful this is, but this week we have 2 tables set up outside of the portable building for Earl of Sandwich, where last week there were no tables. Right underneath these windows, there was nothing. Looks like they were getting ready to add something. There's little placeholders for something to be attached to that building. This week, they have attached something to that building. Again, this is a minor thing. I've said this before. Sometimes we pay a lot of attention to minor things, but even minor things can tell a story, and this story says, going forward. This structure, this building is going forward. There's no point in putting those tables on there if this is dead. It's not dead. Has to be, right? So if this is not dead, if Earl of Sandwich out here in downtown Disney is not dead, that means they're still building the Earl's. That means they're still closing. They're still going to close the La Brea Bakery location because you don't need this temporary building. Even if they're still planning to build the new Earl of Sandwich over there on the opposite side of downtown Disney, next to Din Tai Fung, but they're not building Portos, you could still leave Earl of Sandwich in that location at La Brea until they're done building the new building. We're going in circles. This to me says all things are going forward. That's what this tells me. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. I'm an optimistic guy, and I'm going to say these tables mean things are happening for Earl of Sandwich. Meanwhile, Din Tai Fung is on the home stretch to completion. The structure on top of the building there looks to be wrapping up fairly soon. That's just, HVAC, etc., I think. There's your sign, brightly lit Din Tai Fung sign out there at the entrance. Matter of fact, let's take a look at that entrance. We can peek through here just a minute. Look at all that space out in front there. They're going to build a queue out here. Watch. This place is so popular, they're going to build a queue. I kid, of course. But it looks like they're pretty near done here. It looks like they're just kind of cleaning things up and putting in the final touches on the exteriors, just like we've seen here in the rear of the building. We've got some crew there inside the glass, inside the restaurant building. That's great. Right next to it, though, let's give you an update on Bag Check, the new Bag Check that they're building. Well, it looks like actually they have built. This looks done. This looks complete, and we had been wondering if they were building some kind of new Bag Check scanning system. But I'm going to take this as a sign. What we're seeing here is that this is going to be just like the existing Bag Check. There's going to be no forward advancement in terms of technology. We were wondering, because the way they were building some vertical steel, we wondered what that steel meant, if that was possibly for scanners of some kind. But it turns out that steel was just for those gates. You can see, on either side of where those security guys are, there's now metal gates that they can use to close and open up this Bag Check station. And that steel was there just to provide the support. So it's not for a scanner. They're going to still do it the old-fashioned way. Benches and probably the plexiglass and the bowls for your pocketed items. I will say, by the way, that situation is improving. It's not finished. They're not all the way there. They're trying to make that process a little more efficient. Specifically, it's the bowls. It's the bowls that are causing the micro delays. Getting the bowls handed back and forth between the guest, putting their stuff in it, handing it over to the other side of the scanner so guests can collect their bowl or their stuff, the stuff that's in the bowl, and then getting the bowl back to the guests who are entering Bag Check. I feel like they need a third bowl. Right now it's 2. They use 2 bowls, and I feel like they need a third bowl. I'm just going to go with that. But I feel like things have improved. They're getting better at it, so stay tuned on that. As for Parkside Market, looks like you got some steel up there on the right side where the concrete is, so the cinder blocks. They're going to do some kind of facade work there, attach something to it. I don't know what that is. We can't see it in the concept art. The concept art, where that is over there out of frame. So unfortunately, we can't really guess what it is that they could be doing there. Otherwise, I mean, rapid progress here on this building. They are building this thing super fast, faster than they built Din Tai Fung. At least that's been my observation. When this will be done, I couldn't say, but certainly, we'll be lucky if it's done by the new year. Further down, downtown Disney, we reported about a month ago that the dress shop closed in order for Marceline's to expand. Marceline's is going to take over the dress shop location. Marceline's is now closed. Doors are locked up there. So that means from what I understand, everything has been gutted inside. The wall has been torn down, and they're starting to build out inside. We're going to get a new and improved, twice the size Marceline's Confectionery, which is great. Very popular location. Always busy in there. So you can still get Marceline's out here. They've got these little kiosks set up, kind of like, you know, those Amazon pickup stations you see at Whole Foods. You can place an order there. Meanwhile, Dress Shop was installed at the Wonderground Gallery. Now I've heard that Wonderground is coming back, which is interesting because something's got to go, right? You can't close the dress shop so that you can expand Marceline. Marceline's going to double in size, and then move the dress shop to Wonderground. Wonderground, if that comes back, where's that going to go? Something's got to go. So that's downtown Disney. Let's go back to Disneyland and check in on that area next to City Hall, the patio attached to Walt's apartment. I've been fascinated by this development. There's steel there. We were wondering, why in the heck would they need steel up on the patio at Walt's apartment? What's interesting this week is where last week it was just the steel. This week we have the steel and now some 2x4s being arranged in a fashion which it looks like they've set up some kind of fence or wall, a lattice type separation between a rear and the forward section up there, and then with a little doorway, or I don't know if that's the right word, a little entranceway in there. And it's kind of fascinating. This has to be guest facing. This has to be for guests, whether it's VIP guests or daily guests, I don't know. But they're building something on that patio, which is interesting to see any kind of work being done on a space that is so historic. I hope they pay the proper reverence and respect here, but they're building something up there. They are definitely up to something. Meanwhile, work continues on the Emporium. When we were here on this morning, there was once more a lot of whooping and hollering. There was crews back there working excitedly, making a lot of ruckus. I was able to take a sneak peek in the corner there, and it looks like they have taken out one of the windows there, which is not, that's not anything cause for alarm. I just happened to notice that. There's, they take windows out when they do this stuff all the time. No visible progress on the Main Street facade work being done there next to the Silhouette Studio. Let's talk for a minute about great moments with Mr. Lincoln. This is now like the third or fourth week in a row that Lincoln has made the news. We were talking about there's the permit that has been filed for an upgrade to the Great Moments building, or to the attraction. Some were speculating, well, it was a big number, $5 million. Some were speculating that it was for, an update to the Lincoln animatronic, and there was talk of a round table, a turntable. And that's typically used to change whatever is on stage. You'd put an animatronic on the front half of the turntable and another animatronic on the back half facing the opposite direction. And then as the scenes change, you just rotate the turntable and you get a new animatronic on stage. That's always how they've done it. The turntable has existed as far as I know. That's how they bring Lincoln on stage, if I recall. The rumor is that they're going to have Walt, a Walt animatronic built to introduce Lincoln, to introduce this show. This show is deeply attached, deeply connected to Walt and, his desire to build Disneyland. His affection for Lincoln as a president, it goes way back to his childhood. And they referenced that here in the show. In any case, I don't know how true that rumor is. Right now, it's just talk. People are talking about it, and it's kind of making the rounds, although that's you could say that's the echo chamber, everybody repeating each other, but there's, I don't know if there's an actual source for that rumor. So I don't know how realistic, how real this story is, but I will say this. I am in favor of it. If they do this, that would be great. The more Walt we can get in the park, the better, in my opinion. I feel like not enough attention is paid, to be honest, to Walt Disney. I'm sure that's because that's how he wanted it originally. You know, he's not the star of the show. He's not, but he is to me. You know what I mean? He is to me and to a lot of you out there. So if they want to put Walt Disney on stage at the Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln Theater, you just go right ahead. You go right ahead, and I'll tell you what, I'll go. I will go and watch and enjoy. For now, I'll do one of my other favorite things, another thing tied very closely to Walt and his history at Disneyland, the Mark Twain. Travel on the rivers of America to see if we can't see what's happening, what's the latest at the Haunted Mansion. Don't see a lot of dirt. In fact, we can see all the way through again this week, which is great. We can see all the way through to the Disneyland Railroad boarding area, but I don't see any kind of update there. Pan to the right to see what's up. Still waiting for something to happen at the crypt exit where they're supposed to be installing the new gift shop. I'm now more convinced than ever that they're not building it. They're just going to, it's being built somewhere else, and they're just going to bring it in on a truck one day, and boom, we're going to have a gift shop put on in that space, because there's just no way they could build that thing when it doesn't look like they've even started or close to that. There's the, wow, wait a second. That retaining wall looks remarkably different than it did even just a week ago. Those black rectangular sections there, those monolith looking pieces. This is how it looked last week. Slightly different angle, but you can get the idea. They're extending that further towards the mansion itself. That's really cool. I mean, I don't know that that's anything important in terms of guest-facing features, but that definitely signals a progression forward. You gotta say, right? That's a progression forward. That's really cool. We're still waiting for anything to happen where that smoke is, just underneath that smoke for the Disneyland Railroad. That does still look like there's a big ditch back there, a big trench. So we're still waiting for that. Okay, we got to pan back right to the mansion itself. The front lawn and the walkway into the queue itself. There again is the crypt exit. Nothing happening there. Nothing happening there. Let's go back. Yeah, we're still waiting for them to finish that space. Man, if only we could get just a little higher on this. I don't know. Man, I wish there's something happening on that ground. I'm almost positive there's something happening. They are preparing, I believe, to finish that space. I think that they are preparing. And then back towards the garden area where the old Magnolia garden, the fountain. That's where we're looking at right now in the left part of the frame there, now middle. There's a lot of fall protection up still, especially in this space. Lots of fall protection. So that tells you that there's a lot of open trenches down there. I don't believe that there are big ones necessarily, but just big enough so that a person could fall in there. But I believe that's probably just for conduit, plumbing perhaps, something like that, not an elevator. I feel like that part of the operation is done. We'll take our first look at the front of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I was in the park all day this day, and I didn't get to see a single ride vehicle being tested, nothing dropped, no water being run through. I feel like I've got the worst luck in catching that. I'm getting there at the wrong time, but I was there all day yesterday. I didn't see anything. But they are continually running water and testing vehicles these days. I even heard that they were testing logs with the water, the containers of water to simulate body mass. There's Critter Country. You can look through. We're going to get another look at the Critter Country from the train here in a minute. But that's looking through. You can see the train going by right there, actually. This is going to be a little while. This Critter Country situation. This is going to be a little while. We're going to talk about the refurb calendar in a minute, because we were wondering why certain attractions fell off, or the gift shops fell off the refurb calendar. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but there's just no chance that's going to be done anytime soon. I mean, it could be September. We'll see. Oh, it's right. Okay, now we're going to pan left and take, this is the turnaround before you go up the second lift hill. Look at all of that greenery that they're getting ready to install. That is going to be one lush landscape when this is finished. Look at that. There's so much there. And not all of that has been, or some of that has been installed. Some of it is waiting to be installed. On the other side of all that greenery is the track, the actual waterway track there. I was hoping for more water there, actually. I wanted to see some more water so we can get more of a bayou feeling in that space, but we'll have to wait and see how that develops. We're back at Critter Country. Spare that tree. That tree is not coming down, hallelujah, but there's a whole mess of dirt, and you can see right on through some of those spaces where the boats first take off. We'll pan to the left as we approach or look more towards the briar patch. That's the briar patch in the left third of your frame right there. But look at that. They have just carved that whole section out of there. That's where that little width of space there that separates the mountain from Earth, as it were. That's where the path was. This little piece right there. That was former path, I have to believe. And they've chewed all that out, and they're going to rebuild it, probably something closer to ground level. Let's go ahead and get on the train now for our look at Critter Country from first the rear side of the train towards the entrance to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. We're still in dirt mode. We're going to be in this mode for a little while still as crews begin to, or continue to tear out this area and rebuild it. If I'm not mistaken, that's the entryway to the attraction. To the left of the red, the red arm of that vehicle. I'm trying to see if I can tell if any of that has been stripped. I'm sure they are stripping it, and if they're not painting it yellow, they're going to at least give it a refresh. But I'm going to pay close attention to that area right there in future ride-throughs to see if we can't spot anything. And I'm also going to see if I can't remember to redirect the camera to look into that queue a little bit, because there are cast in there. There are construction right there. See that? Those guys are up to something in that queue. They're doing something in there. Before we turn around and look the other direction, let's update you all once more on the steel that we saw up. It's not very important, but if I see stuff like this, I just get excited. I don't see anything happening there though. Nothing new developing on that queue space, or that steel being put in the rear of that queue space. Okay, here's the train view facing the briar patch. Just total devastation. Look, stop, wait, go back. That's the entrance to the Winnie the Pooh, Many Adventures of the Winnie the Pooh. They've covered that up. I wonder if that's just to protect it from, all the work that's being done. Probably so. I wouldn't imagine they're going to redo anything there. As a matter of fact, there's not much to redo. But it is kind of frightening looking. They've taken out the windows at the briar patch. I mean, they're supposed to take... did they already? I know they're taking out one of those windows and going to close it up in order to put more kiosk-type situations out in front of the structure. I kind of wish it looks like I didn't get my camera tilted all the way back in time to look at what's happening to the right of the tree there, or the new queue space. Gonna have to do that again better next week. But I think the reason for that is this week I wanted to see inside that entrance barn for Winnie the Pooh, which there's got a lot of scaffolding up there, but nothing really dramatic happening in that queue space. So next week we'll try to get a better look at what's happening in the updated queue space next to Briar Patch. All right, before we get on the ground, I took a quick peek into the Haunted Mansion queue space from the Adventureland Treehouse. And you can see, this is what I was talking about before. This feels like it's up. They're building this up now. This is a forward progress type view that I'm seeing here. A lot of wooden stakes in the grounds, a lot of fall protection, even some new steel, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to see some progress here in the very near future. Meanwhile, from the train, when we were stopped just before we were on our way to go check out Critter Country, I was able to get a view of that same space. And there again, as you can see all that fall protection that we were talking about. Wherever you see that netting, you can assume that there's a trench. It's not like a big cavernous thing, as I mentioned. It's small trenches for conduit or plumbing of that, or things of that nature. But it's all over. But that tells me again that they're getting ready to close that up, I think, and start building up. That is a lot. As for Tiana's Bayou Adventure from the treehouse, pretty much the same view that we've been seeing now for past couple of weeks. There are still crew up there doing things, but it's small details, I believe. And I'm starting to think that they're not going to finish. There's that crew again. What they're working on, couldn't say. And now on the ground, we can see that they've begun applying the shingles to the roof of the lift hill barn. One shingle at a time. You can see those two guys there in the left of frame. Oh, now they're out of frame. But you can see one shingle here. There you go. Put that in place. One at a time. I love it. I think that's just great. Now this guy's fascinating. He's got this very long apparatus, which it looks like, you know, something that Gandalf would yield, but it's actually to paint, if I'm not mistaken. He's got a container or something attached to it on his left hand, and he's kind of, you know, it's like a selfie stick. And he's sticking into certain areas, but what he's doing there, it appears, is applying just small little details of texture of paint to the mountain exterior. Because there you can see him again in the distance there. He's gonna touch that up right there. That is the level of detail that they go through when updating these things. And I feel like not enough attention is paid to just how, look at they're not taking this lightly, you guys. Like, every little nuance matters to them, at least. I mean, to me too, and to us, but we take it for granted. We just assume they just build this thing up and they don't, you know, that there's not a lot of craftsmanship involved. But when you watch it in this way, this is why I love doing this. That's why I love doing construction reports, because we get to be witness to the craftsmanship, to the expertise that these guys apply to their craft, and I just love it. I think it's great. More attention needs to be paid. We're now at the Davy Crockett Canoe exit area. Just, you know, this looks about like we saw last week again. There's that same crew over there working on the roof for the Lift Hill barn. Look at all that vegetation. All that foliage. I'm loving this. And we're not that far away. We really are not that far away. Months. Just a few months away. I was hoping to catch that guy doing something, but we missed it, I guess. Oh, and so here's a view. This is from the Hungry Bear. When something happens to the entrance barn, this is a good place to see it. And hopefully we do get to see something there. Or we get a sign, at least, of what it might look like in the future. And then finally, a view of the latest on that turnaround as we head back into the show building after the drop. Waiting for them to finish what they were doing here with the meshwork on the rim of the bridge, the lip of that area. And then we'll note here, of course, for those kind of unfamiliar with what's happening at Critter Country, etc. Critter Country is closed, but the Hungry Bear is open. We can take that path up and go get a sandwich right now at the Hungry Bear. You can still eat at the Hungry Bear. You can go up that ramp there, or the stairs are still open. I took those stairs the other night. The stairs are still open to go up to the Hungry Bear as well. And we'll close with a quick summary of what's happening on the refurb calendar. Not a lot of news in one respect, but some very interesting development in others. The entire refurb calendar for the Disneyland Resort looks like this: Pooh Corner, Haunted Mansion, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, the Disneyland Story presenting great moments with Mr. Lincoln, Pooh Corner again for some reason, and the Briar Patch. Those same 6 line items appear on every single day of the refurb calendar as far into the future as we can see. I mentioned that. Hey, that's all that's going on right now is just those key stories. For those of you who, want to know how available is the park, it's actually quite available. There's not a lot of refurb happening right now, except for the 2 that we've been observing forever. That's it. That's all that's being worked on at Disneyland right now is just that one stretch from the Haunted Mansion to Critter Country. But what is also of note this week is that where last week or in weeks prior, we noticed that at a certain point that the Briar Patch and Pooh Corner fell off the refurb calendar. The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh was still on the refurb calendar, but the Briar Patch and Pooh Corner fell off. And we thought, well, does that mean they're going to reopen Critter Country or parts of it so guests can go in there? No. I had actually speculated that perhaps they were doing that because they were changing the name of 2 of those locations. And so therefore, the Briar Patch at some point would cease to be the Briar Patch and it would become something else, but it's not what it's going to be yet, so they can't put it on the calendar. For the same reason why you don't see Tiana's Bayou Adventure or Splash Mountain on this calendar. You see neither one of those here. Well, they remedied that for Pooh Corner and the Briar Patch. In fact, they've added a second Pooh Corner, which tells me that that's a placeholder for the eventual Critter Co-op. One line item will be Pooh Corner because that's going to remain as a location when the land reopens, and then another line item for Critter Co-op. Which also tells me that I believe that this entire land will stay closed until they're done. They're not going to open up parts of Critter Country early in advance of the opening of Tiana's Bayou Adventure. When Tiana's Bayou Adventure is done, so too will Critter Country reopen, so too will the rest of these gift shops. That is my expectation. And then over at DC, nothing happening there as well. We just had the Redwood Creek Challenge. That's been closed for a little while. That's going to reopen in less than a month on June 21st. And then otherwise, it's just the bakery tour that's closed. That'll be closed until June 2nd. Otherwise, everything is 100% operational at California Adventure. So this goes out to those of you who say half the park is closed. Well, if by half you mean those 2 attractions, then you're right. But otherwise, I feel like the park is in pretty good shape. Pretty good shape outside of Haunted Mansion and Tiana's Bayou Adventure. That, Fresh Baked, is our update this week. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, feel free to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/freshbaked. Otherwise, you can follow us on Instagram at _freshbaked, on Twitter at freshbakedisney, that's fresh with no E, and on TikTok at freshbakedisney. Till next time, guys, thanks for watching. We love you. Be safe out there. Be kind to one another. And Fresh Baked.